This is Behind the Mic with Brad Dalius.
Behind the Mic live on this Thursday evening, March the 15th, 2018. Beware the Ides of March. Beware of this NCAA tournament. Wow, what a first day it's been. I mean, you talk about overtime thrillers from close games, some close calls for some of the lower seed teams, to some good basketball here in the later going of the final couple of games here of the evening. It's been a fantastic day one. Welcome into Behind the Mic, everybody. Brad Dalius with you on the road tonight from Miami. We are away from our home base in Los Angeles. We'll be back in LA next week, back at Grunyon's on Wednesday evening next week, and next Thursday we will be back at Kings Cove over in El Segundo. But it's great to be with you here, like I said, on this Thursday evening. Listen live online, behindthemicshow.com. Be sure to download the app on your smartphone. We are available Behind the Mic on your Google Play Store and on iTunes. Lots to get into this evening. Plenty of action going on right now, as I mentioned, across college basketball in the NCAA Tournament. Some great games. Right now, Buffalo taking on Arizona. That one late here in the first half in the South region. Some of the finals from earlier today, Rhode Island knocked off Oklahoma 83-78. First game of the day, like I alluded to before. I mean, what a way to kick off the tournament with that one specifically. Phenomenal game. Trae Young definitely showed up, played some good basketball. Oklahoma just came up a little bit short in that one, but a phenomenal way to kick off the tournament. Gonzaga was extremely lucky today, 68-64 winners over North Carolina Greensboro. This is the one that had all the makings of a potential upset, and it really did. You saw it from the beginning. It could have happened. Mark Few's team, though, they were able to withstand the storm, and they were able to really punch their ticket ultimately to the second round. Kansas survived an early scare from the Penn Quakers out of the Ivy League, but eventually Kansas pulled away 76-60. This one was tight in the first half. It was tight. It was only a 10-point advantage for the Jayhawks, for Penn earlier in the game. They had a 10-point lead. Kansas was able to come back and was able to really make this a close game, and ultimately they were able to prevail in the end, but Kansas overall was victorious today. By the way, we're going to talk tonight with SB Nation and one of their great bloggers, fantastic writer for the State of the U blog. We're going to be joined by Michael Franca. He's going to join us at the bottom of the hour, 10:30 Eastern time, and that's 7:30 Pacific back in Los Angeles. Talk to him about this loss today, and this was probably the game of the day so far in the tournament. You had Miami taking on Loyola-Chicago, a team that a lot of people were high on. They came into the tournament boasting a 28-5 record all year. They had played good basketball. They had beaten Florida down in Gainesville earlier on in the regular season. And it was one of those games that came down to the wire. A missed free throw by Miami freshman Lonnie Walker on a one-on-one free throw opportunity towards the end of the game opened the door for Loyola-Chicago to come back the other way. They drill a three at essentially the buzzer with 0.3 of a second left. Not much you can do with that one, as Loyola-Chicago was able to come back down and ultimately win the game on that shot. So fantastic finish, tough one for the folks down here in Miami. Like I said, we will talk with the State of the U blogger, Mr. Michael Franca, coming up at the bottom of the hour about that game today. Other games from across the NCAA tournament. I thought Duke looked very impressive, 89-67 over Iona. They did what they had to do to survive and advance. As I mentioned at the top here, currently the game that's going on, 27-26, Buffalo with the 1-point advantage right now, coming up on 6 minutes to play in the first half in that one. Alabama, Virginia Tech, it's a 2-point advantage right now for the Hokies. They're at halftime, that game over on TNT. The games soon to be played tonight. Michigan will be in action. They take on the 14th seeded Montana. That one tips off at about 10:26 Eastern time. St. Bonaventure in Florida just getting underway. 2 minutes into that one over on True TV. The Bonnies with the 1-point advantage early on. Houston, 67-65 over San Diego State. That was a good one just a little bit ago. That one got finished, and that one concluded down there, but the Cougars are moving on. Texas Tech survived a bit of a scare from Stephen F. Austin, but they ultimately prevailed 70-60. And Kentucky survived a pesky Davidson bunch that was bringing up a lot of memories of people from Steph Curry's Elite Eight Davidson run that they went on back just about 10 years ago now, a full decade ago. But ultimately, Texas Tech was able to take down Stephen F. Austin 70-60, as I said, and then Kentucky prevailed over Davidson 78-73. Top-seeded Villanova all over Radnor, 87-61. They took care of them earlier today. And Seton Hall outlasted NC State 94-83. Hey, how's your bracket looking so far? I got to tell you, my bracket is a mess here on day one. I mean, it really is. So I had Gonzaga, which was good. Talked about them surviving a little bit earlier. Tennessee was able to prevail as well, but obviously I got knocked out in Loyola-Chicago versus Miami. Did not do great on that. And I bought into the hype on Penn out of the Ivy League. Seth Davis from CBS and Turner Sports covering the tournament obviously was really high on them, picked him as his underdog lock of the day. Penn left a lot of people down. They really did in this one today. It was an ultimate tease with a 10-point lead earlier on in the game. But as I mentioned, Kansas was able to really play good basketball and was able to come back and take a lead. It was a 16-point win in the end, but it really wasn't that close as Penn played it tight. But I bought into the Penn hype, and that one let me down. Rhode Island and Oklahoma, like I said, one of the great games today, the very first game of the day on CBS. Rhode Island prevailed in overtime. This was the Trae Young hype game, and there is a lot of deservedly good hype around Trae Young as he has played some very good basketball overall for Oklahoma and the Sooners this year, and he was on display once again today as Oklahoma was able to prevail so far and move on to the round of 32. But outside of that, like I said, I think Duke and Villanova were the two most impressive teams today. I'd probably give it to the Wildcats. They looked very good, as I said, in their victory, taking down a 16 seed. So 2 1 seeds move on today in Villanova and Kansas, albeit a scare that the Jayhawks withstood. We will see 2 more number ones in action tomorrow. Xavier will take on Texas Southern, that game to be played in Nashville. And then the number 1 overall seed in the tournament, the Virginia Cavaliers, will battle Maryland, Baltimore County. That one to be played in Charlotte. So, like I said, it was a day in which there was a lot of close games. Some upsets happened, others did not. It was good basketball overall. It's been very exciting. We'll continue to talk about the tournament here coming up. Like I said, we will be joined at the bottom of the hour by the State of the U blogger, Mr. Michael Franca. He joins us to talk about the Miami Hurricanes' loss today to Loyola-Chicago. We'll talk to him in just a bit. Tonight, we'll also get into some NFL free agency talk, as there was a lot of wheeling and dealing going on day one of the NFL league year, which was yesterday. I'll tell you, teams wasted no time at all. I mean, no time. If you were looking for a day in which it might have been quiet out of the NFL, no, that was not the case at all. Lots happened. We'll get into it later on in the show today, but we can definitely touch on that. Tiger Woods was impressive today, opening round 64 at Bay Hill, the Arnold Palmer Invitational. He follows up a second-place finish at the Valspar Championship last week with a good 64 today to kick things off. 68, rather, what he shot in the opening round at Bay Hill, like I said. Sunk a 70-foot putt. Are you kidding me? I tweeted it out today. Follow me on Twitter, by the way, at Brad Dalius. A 70-foot putt. Are you kidding me? I mean, this is the old Tiger Woods that we have loved to have seen throughout the career that he has been able to post. Some of these just ridiculously good shots. And it was impressive. Once again today, it really, really was what he was able to do to come out of the gates, shoot a 64, post a 4 under par. At the time, it was good for first place. But then Stenson came out and shot a 68 in the lead at -8 over there at Bay Hill. So with as well as Tiger played last week at the end of the Valspar Championship, as I said, finished second, and his hot start today, couple those two things together, it got Vegas thinking, maybe, just maybe, we should make him the favorite right now for the Masters. And that's exactly what they did. Now that tells you something. If Vegas feels that Tiger's game is at the point where he can compete in not just a major, but the first major of the year at Augusta in just a couple of weeks, that tells me something. You hear people say that the line is telling them something. This is the definition of that. It's going to be very, very exciting if he can continue to play this way throughout the weekend at Bay Hill, and then in the next couple of weeks and other tournaments he partakes in. If he's able to play at that high level, look out Augusta. I mean, look out. That's all I got to say. Look out Jordan Spieth. Look out Dustin Johnson. Adam Scott. Look out Phil Mickelson. Look out the field. Let's put it that way. Look out the field at Augusta overall at the Masters. It's going to be a heck of a tournament coming up in just a few weeks. It's hard to believe. After March Madness, we will go right to Augusta, right to the Masters, wasting no time, obviously, and get into that action. But golf is starting to heat up, and you think you're feeling it. We talked about it last week, about Phil playing better golf, winning in Mexico recently. Tiger playing better. Seems that he is on the cusp of winning a tournament if it doesn't happen this weekend, perhaps real soon, perhaps at the Masters. We shall see. Just getting started here on Behind the Mic. We're on the road tonight. Brad Daly is taking you up into midnight Eastern time, 9 o'clock out on the West Coast in Los Angeles. Lots of NCAA Tournament talk, March Madness. I've already talked a little bit here at the show open about that. We will talk to SB Nation blogger Mr. Michael Franca coming up after the break. He will call in, give his thoughts on the Miami Loyola-Chicago buzzer beater shot finish today for Loyola-Chicago, much to the chagrin of the Hurricanes fans. We'll talk to him in just a little bit. NFL free agency talk is coming up on the horizon as well, and we can continue to talk Tiger Woods and how impressive as he's been recently, not only at the Valspar last week, but getting off to a very hot start here at Bay Hill on this Thursday, March the 15th. And then coming up, obviously, in just a few weeks from the Masters, we can talk about golf, we can talk about the Masters, NFL free agency, lots of March Madness, whatever you want to talk about. Give us a call, 213-261-7491, 213-261-7491. It's Behind the Mic, and we're coming back for more after this.
Our military service members volunteer to protect us in the most dangerous places around the world. They step up. And when they are severely ill or injured, returning to their families is only the beginning of their long road home. Beyond all the hospitals and doctors and surgeries they need just to survive, they also deserve whatever they need to truly live. All the in-home care and day-to-day help they need to live independently, on their own terms. Wounded Warrior Project long-term support program these brave men and women whatever they need to continue their fight for independence at no cost for life. So many of them need us, and it's time for a grateful nation to step up. Find out how you can do your part at findwwp.org.
It took me a long time to be able to say Chandler has cancer, because that is such a scary word. St. Jude takes care of absolutely everything. And knowing that we don't have to pay for all of the medical expenses, that's huge.
St. Jude allowed me to focus on being a mom to Bryce. And sometimes I'm just in awe of the impact St. Jude has, not only on this community, but the world.
St. Jude is uniquely positioned to advance the cures of pediatric cancer, I think better than any other institution in the world. The contributions make a big difference.
Donors are important to us because you get the feeling that you have a team behind you. We have the resources and we have the focus. And so if St. Jude doesn't do it, who will?
St. Jude Children's Research Hospital. Finding cures, saving children. Learn more at stjude.org.
We all come together and stand together to serve our veterans. We invest in the latest technology.
We take the time to train the next generation of doctors and nurses. We work together to make sure we heal their bodies and their minds.
This is our mission. More than 300,000 of us working as one, together with families and loved ones. No matter where they live in this country, we'll be there.
We stand strong, united. Stand with us in caring for our veterans.
Hi, I'm Danica Patrick and proud aunt. Watching my nieces grow, play, and learn is amazing. But not every child gets to be carefree. 1 in 6 kids in the U.S. are hungry. 1 in 6. That little girl sitting alone at the playground, she can't play like the other kids. She doesn't have the energy because she's hungry. School lunch will be her only meal today. It breaks my heart that this is the reality in our country, but it's something that Feeding America is working to change. Each year, the Feeding America network of food banks rescues billions of pounds of good food that would have gone to waste. This food is then provided to families and children in need. Being a kid should be about using your imagination, learning, and having fun. These children shouldn't have to miss out on simply being a kid because they're hungry. To find out how you can help end childhood hunger in your community, visit feedingamerica.org.
Brought to you by Feeding America and the Ad Council.
You're listening to Behind the Mic with Brad Dalius.
On the road tonight from Miami. We will be back next week in Los Angeles. Break, talking lots of March Madness tonight. A couple of games still in action right now. You've got Buffalo taking on Arizona. Stu got a couple of games left here in the night before day one of the tournament officially is in the books. Virginia Tech currently with a 43-41 advantage over Alabama. That one at the half. Montana and Michigan just getting underway as well over on TBS. Now, though, we're going to bring in a guy who has the pulse. I talked about we're in Miami tonight. He's got the pulse of the Miami Hurricanes, basketball, football, all kind of different sports. But tonight we're going to talk specifically with him about this Miami unfortunate defeat today at the hands of Loyola-Chicago, as we now bring in from SB Nation's The State of the U blog. Mr. Michael Franca joins us now over the phone here on Behind the Mic. Hey, Michael, thanks so much for joining us tonight. How are things going for you?
Tough game, but everything's all right. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, yeah. No, this was a game that was shaping up to be one of the best games of the day from the beginning. You can kind of see that as the first half unfolded into halftime and then into the second half, and it probably wound up being one of the best finishes of the day. Miami comes in as a team that was playing good basketball, but I think unfortunately what happened is they ran into a team that was playing even better basketball in Loyola-Chicago. Only 5 losses all year long. This was a team that some people felt could pull off an upset today in that 6-11 matchup against the Hurricanes, and that's exactly what happened. But, just your take, Michael, on how this game played out and what ultimately went wrong for the Hurricanes.
Yeah, it was a pretty tight one all the way through, and even like looking back at the stats after the game, pretty much everything was neck and neck in like every category. But in the end, it was just a couple things that really ruined it for Miami. It was late turnovers and just turnovers in general throughout, and they also let Loyola get too many threes up.
And that's something that Loyola-Chicago was, trying to – that was their game. Obviously, they wanted to go to that. Why was it that the Miami defense was not able to ultimately solve this Loyola team? And obviously that's easier said than done, but head coach Jim Larinaga knew what he was getting into with his team. It seemed like it was just a sense of, having the ability to execute when it mattered the most. And it seems like that led to their demise today. Maybe it was fatigue. Not sure. That's how it came off, though.
Yeah, in fairness, Loyola is a really tough team. That offense is dangerous. They keep the ball moving. They don't really stop ever. So, yeah, the fatigue definitely kicked in towards the end. And honestly, the Hurricanes played them pretty tight throughout. The defense wasn't terrible. They shot lower percentages than they did throughout the season, Loyola did. But, yeah, it's just impossible to contain that movement. There's screen, they re-screen, the driving kicks. They just get so many open looks.
Okay, so take us back now to when Lonnie Walker misses the free throw at the one-on-one opportunity. And actually, let's go back even further than that. Let's go back to the play where they inbound the ball to Walker. And, whether or not Loyola was trying to go for the steal, whether they were trying to go for the intentional foul, they wound up disrupting the ball there, and Walker's concentration, it goes out of bounds off of Walker, and then Loyola gets the ball back. Just a series of unfortunate events there for Walker.
Yeah, he's had a great season and a great last month, but those last couple minutes were brutal for him, and they're probably going to be his last with the Hurricanes. I'd imagine he's going to declare for the draft. So yeah, he just kind of had a little bit of a mental lapse when he should have just caught that inbound, let them foul him, but instead he tried to make a play, tried to take it up court, ended up letting them steal it, even though that was probably more luck. And then, of course, the crucial free throw miss at the end.
Killer.
Yeah, and he's been a decent free throw shooter throughout the season. He shot something like 75%, so missing the front end of that 1-and-1 was brutal.
I completely agree. I'm curious to get your thoughts. By the way, we're talking with SB Nation's Michael Franca joining us here on Behind the Mic. What is your thoughts on Lonnie Walker, his freshman season? He came out of he won a state championship last year in high school out of Reading, Pennsylvania. Highly recruited. He chooses to go down to Miami. First season under his belt. You mentioned there he had a really good year overall. A couple of tough moments towards the end of this first round exit for them. How do you sum up his first year, his freshman year in Miami?
Yeah, overall it was pretty good in my opinion. He came in a little slow. He was coming off a knee injury. But then when Bruce Brown went out, he really started to heat up, and he finished the season really hot. He had some up and downs. He wasn't particularly consistent, but when he caught fire, he was incredible. He was the team's leading scorer after that, I believe, and he finished the season really well. Overall, it's going to be a pretty good one. He's one of the most talented players to come through the Miami basketball program, I think.
Now, you kind of alluded to this just a moment ago, but you think he's one and done? You think he's going to the NBA in June?
I do. I mean, I'm not positive. It's not for sure, but I think it would be hard to pass up considering he's getting talk as a potential lottery pick.
And it's very interesting because this is a player who I think a lot of people, if you don't follow the ACC on a regular basis, if you're not tuned into college basketball during the regular season, you haven't heard too much about. You have in recent weeks, obviously, towards the end of the regular season, into the conference tournaments and now into the NCAAs, obviously. But he is only going to garner more national attention at this point in time. Do you think he is ready to go into the NBA to take the next step after covering this team this year, seeing him progress through his freshman year? Do you think he is ready, or would he benefit from coming back, in your opinion?
I think for the most part, a lot of these guys would benefit from a little bit more time in college, but it would be maybe a little bit silly to pass up the chance to go to the NBA because you never know. Like Bruce Brown this year when he got injured and missed the majority of the season or late January on, that kind of thing could happen, and that'll tank your draft stocks. So I think Lonnie's probably could benefit from more time, but I don't think he would or possibly even should.
Now, Michael, you got to help me here, and you got to help me calm down a lot of Hurricane fans who think that they need a new coach and they need to fire Jim Larrañaga. Not the case at all in this game. This really came down to being beaten out by a better opponent. Larrañaga continues to be a head coach that has done really one of the best jobs we've ever seen a head coach do in Miami, and continues to build off of his legacy and resume as a coach who has won a lot of tournament games.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, people calling for him to be fired, I think that's a little bit ridiculous. He might be the best, if not one of the best coaches to ever coach Miami basketball. The offensive system is pretty simplistic, so I get that might rub some fans the wrong way. But with the talent they have, and if they had a better point guard, I think that wouldn't be an issue in general, if they had more of a pass-first point guard. So in general, his season with Miami and his time at Miami have been great. He's brought the program to ridiculous heights that were not even close to the years before him.
Yeah, it's been night and day. There's no question about it. Unfortunately, they come up a little bit short today, 64-62 to Loyola, as we had mentioned. Let's take a look around the tournament right now, Michael. Let's kind of start in the South, in the same region that Miami was in. Obviously, Loyola is going to advance now to take on Tennessee in the second round. That matchup, we saw Tennessee really take care of Wright State pretty easily for the most part today. Does Loyola stand another chance? Or does the run come to an end potentially against the Volunteers?
I actually really do think Loyola stands a chance in that game. I know Tennessee's a tough team. They had a great season. But Loyola, the more I watch them, the more I realize that they're not a fluke. They're there for a good reason, and their offense is incredibly efficient, and I think that's something that's going to give any team in the country trouble.
It's the Ramblers' first tournament win in over 30 years today. They're going to advance, as I said. This is a team that I feel just... Michael, I mean, they won in Florida earlier this year, down in Gainesville. They were good enough to do that. They have not gotten the national attention, despite the fact that during the regular season they were 28-5. This is a team that, as you know, if you've been watching a lot of the different pieces on TV, you saw they have this somewhat of a spiritual connection with their team chaplain, who is 98 years old. And they seem to have a feel-good story. I think so far on day one of the tournament here, as we look around the bracket, they have to be that feel-good story, Cinderella-esque of the tournament so far. Yeah, I agree. I think in terms of storylines, that's about as good as it's gotten so far in this first round. Probably as good as it'll get, too. But also in terms of ability, they're the kind of underdog that actually has a chance at moving forward. In the West region, you had Gonzaga, who, in my opinion, was very fortunate to get past UNC Greensboro today as the Zags move on in the West region. Your take on Gonzaga, Michael, coming back here, they were the national runner-up last year. We know it's very difficult when you're a runner-up to come back the following year and get all the way back to that same plateau. Where do you think Gonzaga is at? Is this a team that can somewhat rebound from their struggles today and have a deep tournament run? Or is this a team that it looks like they potentially could be on upset alert on any given day? The way they look today, I think they could definitely be on upset alert heading forward. But if I had to guess, I'd say they'd probably bounce back, make a little bit of a run, maybe Elite Eight-ish, but I don't think they'll be making any deep run, any serious noise. Now, Xavier is the top seed in the West region. They'll take on Texas Southern tomorrow. I feel that this region, especially the top half of it, is the one that if you can get hot, any team, you potentially could make a run all the way to the Elite Eight. Xavier does not seem to be a team that is impenetrable. I think, potentially out of that region at the top there, especially Ohio State, if they can get on a run, they could make it to the Elite Eight. Gonzaga, obviously, and at the very bottom, obviously, of the region is North Carolina, the 2 seed. Is this a region that is somewhat up for grabs, or are we maybe not giving Xavier as much credit as they deserve?
I think in general people are kind of discounting Xavier a little bit more than they should. But as far as like comparing to the other regions, yeah, I think this is the one that's most up for grabs. Personally, I think Michigan might make like the most noise out of this whole region, considering how hot they finished the season. But I think, yeah, it'll probably shake out to Xavier and Gonzaga and Michigan and UNC in that Sweet 16.
Once again, we're talking to SB Nation's Michael Franca, breaking down Miami basketball, their defeat today to Loyola-Chicago, also going around the tournament right now and discussing the different regions. In the East, I thought Villanova was very impressive today over Radford. Really took care of them to advance to the second round in that region. You have Purdue, who will be in action tomorrow. I feel like Villanova is a team maybe similar to Xavier that people aren't giving it enough credit to. Outside of 2016, when they won the national title, they've been prone to being upset earlier on in the tournament. It seems, though, to me that this Villanova team is locked in. They are locked in for a deep run based off of what we saw today, not having much of a hard time with Radner, as I mentioned. Your take on Villanova and where they're at on day one of the tournament.
Yeah, absolutely. I personally think they're the best team in the tournament. I think it would have been Virginia had they not suffered a big injury blow with their sixth man. But I think Virginia is going to be the best team in this tournament. And if I had to guess, I'd say they were going to take it all.
So you like?
They've been playing incredible basketball. Yeah, they've been playing incredible basketball, and Mikal Bridges in particular, that he's going to be an incredible player throughout the tournament and moving forward when he probably declares for the draft.
I like it. I completely agree. It is amazing how things can change here on a dime in this tournament and how things continue to really go day by day. Kansas played Penn earlier today. I bought into the Penn hype a little bit too much, Michael. I thought they had a realistic shot of maybe, just maybe, being the first team as a 16 seed to potentially knock off a number one. It really wasn't close in the end. Give Penn credit. They did play Kansas tough for the most part, kept it within single digits, but Kansas just too much in the end.
Yeah, I actually got swept away by that too. You know, everyone was talking about Penn and their chances of being the best 16 seed in I don't know how long. And then they started the game hot. They really played Kansas tight. But, of course, yeah, I'll never bet against the one. Kansas ended up.
I know, it's crazy.
Yeah.
I wanted to see it, you know. I want to see it happen. It's going to happen one year, I want to think. But I don't think we're going to see it here in 2018 at this point, unfortunately.
Yeah, unfortunately. Would have been a lot of fun, though.
No doubt, no doubt. Like I said, it will happen at one point, but just not quite yet. There's just too much of a disparity between a 1 and 16, obviously. You have to play a perfect game if you're a 16. That's what it comes down to. And you just can't miss 5 or 6 or so consecutive shots in a row and expect to win. That goes without saying. Sticking in the Midwest, Duke, I thought Duke looked very impressive over Iona. Really didn't bat an eye, similar to Villanova in that sense. And I like Duke to get to the Final Four personally. This is one of the best teams they've had here since they've had Jahlil Okafor. Your take on Duke and where they're at with Bagley, Grayson Allen, and company?
Yeah, I like Duke a lot. I think they're great this year. I think, of course, Bagley's been phenomenal. And having the veteran leadership of Grayson Allen helps. But also Wendell Carter's been great. He's been a real standout, a little bit more so than I would have expected, even though he was highly touted. And I think they're a real threat, especially given that region. I think they might be more talented than Kansas. So I think the real tough matchup for them in their side of the bracket would be Michigan State.
Give us a team right now, Michael, that most people really aren't talking about. Maybe a team in tomorrow's slate of games that could surprise some people.
Well, I would have said for today, Arizona. I know they're probably losing now at half, I believe. But I think just the talent on that team, especially if DeAndre Ayton, noise, especially, again, considering their second-round opponent would be Kentucky, who didn't look particularly great. Then from there it would be probably Virginia, I'd imagine, and they're a little short-handed with injuries. So I think Arizona might be able to have a deep run into the tournament given their draw. And also, of course, Ayton and Hawkins and all the other guys on that roster.
They're currently battling Buffalo. It's at the half. You're right, Buffalo up 40-38 at this current point in time. That one shaping up to be a good one. I agree, though, because, with all the black clouds currently surrounding the Arizona program, to me, I thought about a week or two ago that they were a team who could be on upset alert, and, they could very well be in this game. But the way that Ayton stepped up in the Pac-12 tournament and how dominant he's been, I do think this is a team that could potentially make a deep run if they continue to stay focused and keep their eye on the prize. We'll have to keep tabs on it. How about some of the first four teams? You have St. Bonaventure currently in action right now against Florida. Syracuse, you'll see them in action tomorrow against TCU. Could potentially one of these first four teams that won earlier this week, Michael, could they possibly make a deep run in the tournament if they can catch lightning in a bottle?
Yeah, I actually coming in kind of like St. Bonaventure's chances. I'm not sure how deep of a run they could make, but I think Florida's certainly vulnerable, and St. Bonaventure's been surprisingly good. And then from there, Texas Tech, they also look kind of vulnerable today playing Stephen F. Austin. So I think if anybody has a real chance of those four teams, it'd be St. Bonaventure. They've been playing great basketball.
There's something to the first four. We saw it with VCU several years ago, making it all the way to the Final Four, and teams just get hot. And, Syracuse was the last at-large bid to be given out in the tournament. They just got in, but you get the sense, just watching them the other night, and potentially if they have a chance to knock off TCU tomorrow, with the veteran leadership from Boeheim, it's a team that if they get in, as they have, they could make some noise. We'll have to keep tabs on it, obviously. What are you most looking forward to, Michael, as the tournament progresses? Maybe not necessarily tomorrow, but as things go along, what's maybe a certain storyline that has stood out to you the most?
Well, for one, the Loyola-Chicago storyline. I'd love to see them make a run after today's game. I think they're a lot of fun, too, after having gone back and watching a bunch of their old games. It's a team that it's super easy to fall in love with them, even though they gave my Hurricanes a beating today. But yeah, so that's the storyline I'm looking forward to most.
And where does Miami go from here after this loss? Obviously an early round NCAA tournament exit, not what they thought. They thought they could make it a little further. Where do they go? They regroup, and where do they go from here as they look towards the next season?
Yeah, we're kind of in a tough spot, I think. The program has been trending upwards over the last couple of years. They've picked up better recruits than they ever have. But then this FBI scandal hit earlier in the year, and Miami was initially kind of considered to be one of the universities, but eventually some of the allegations turned out to be false, and there hasn't really been anything concrete to come to light. But of course, that hindered our recruiting for this class. We have no commits. It doesn't look like we'll be landing any significant recruits in this class. And that's kind of going to affect the recruiting moving forward as well. We're one of the top teams in for the top prospect of the 2019 class, Vernon Carey Jr. But with no recruits in this class, it's hard to see us making a serious push for players when there's less talent on the roster, and especially considering Bruce Brown and Lonnie Walker are likely to move on after this year.
SB Nation's Michael Franca. Follow him on Twitter at Michael E. Franca. Be sure to check out his blog, The State of the U. Awesome stuff that you guys are putting out over there on SB Nation. Always a lot of fun. Michael, thanks so much for taking some time out to call into us tonight. We're sorry that the Hurricanes fell a little bit short, but they'll be back.
That's all right. Yeah, hopefully. Thank you very much.
You got it, Michael. All the best to you. Enjoy the rest of the tournament.
Will do.
There he goes. SB Nations, as I said there, Michael Franca, putting out some great stuff online. He's a fantastic writer for SB Nations, the State of the U blog. Just fantastic stuff. Great insights for him as far as everything that's going on with the NCAA tournament on day number 1, as there's some action to be played here the rest of this evening before day 2 kicks off tomorrow on Friday. Looking forward to all the action to come tomorrow as well. And I have a feeling we'll definitely see some more buzzer beaters and some close finishes in store for us as the games get underway tomorrow on Friday the 16th. We'll step aside for a break here on Behind the Mic. We'll come back on the other side. We'll talk a little NFL free agency, Maybe get into some NBA stuff as well. Tiger Woods, as I mentioned at the top of the show, played phenomenal golf today, round 1 of the Bay Hill Arnold Palmer Invitational. Tiger comes out, shoots a 64, sinks a 70-foot putt. Are you kidding me? He's in contention once again. He's getting the attention of Las Vegas. They're making him the favorite going into the Masters in just a few weeks at Augusta. Lots to talk about in the world of sports. 213-261-7491. 213-261-7491. It's Behind the Mic. Brad Daly is taking you up until midnight Eastern Time, 9 o'clock out on the West Coast.
Hey there.
What's up, bruh?
Hello.
Aloha.
Hey, y'all.
Hey.
Hola. Hi.
It takes a lot of voices to create the sound of us. The Y welcomes all of them with open arms. From career readiness to safe spaces, the Y is there, no matter who we are. Now, more than ever, they need your support. Donate to your local Y today. The Y, for a better us.
Read by members of the Y.
Everybody buckle up.
Mom, 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 mom.
Buckle up.
Let's go.
Buckle up.
Can we go to the store?
Mom,
can we get some ice cream?
Everybody, buckle up.
A lot goes on in the car, but you're in control. So only move when you hear the click that says they're buckled in. Never give up until they buckle up. Learn more at safercar.gov/kidsbuckleup. A message from the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration and the Ad Council.
Everyone is talking about healthcare these days. America spends twice that of other developed countries on our healthcare system, yet our health ranks near the bottom. How can we stop spending so much and getting so little? Shifting to a system based on primary care can help fix the problem. Patients with a primary care doctor live longer, healthier lives and are less likely to suffer from cancer, heart disease, or stroke. Primary care that is comprehensive and coordinated also saves money. Patients who have a primary care doctor spend 30% less on health care than patients who don't. States with a high number of primary care doctors have lower health care costs and higher quality care. Primary care can help make America healthy again. To learn more about the benefits of primary care, visit www.healthisprimary.org. This message is brought to you by America's Family Physicians.
Dave, what are you doing?
Just sending a gift to Dave 2037.
Who?
Me in the future. I save a little money from every paycheck as a gift to Dave 2037, so he can spend it on things like anti-gravity boots or a hologram Doberman, something cool like that. I think Dave 2037 deserves it. He worked hard. What are you getting Steve 2037?
I guess I was thinking Steve 2037 would just fend for himself.
Well, all right, but don't expect to be borrowing my anti-gravity boots.
You want to have money in your future? You got to start saving now. Putting some money from every paycheck into a savings account or contributing to your 401k can make a big difference later. Put away a few bucks, feel like $1 million. For free ideas and easy ways to save, go to feedthepig.org. That's feedthepig.org.
Hey, let's just hope Steve 2037 doesn't get his hands on a cold time machine, because he is going to come back here and knock some sense into you.
This message brought to you by the American Institute of Certified Public Accountants and the Ad Council.
We're here early before they wake up. We stay late. We stay informed. We invest in the latest technology.
We take the time to train the next generation of doctors and nurses. We work together to make sure we heal their bodies and their minds.
We do this not because it's our job, but because this is about our veterans' lives. This is our mission. More than 300,000 of us working as one, together with families and loved ones. No matter where they live in this country, we'll be there.
We all come together and stand together to serve our veterans. We stand strong, united. Stand with us in caring for our veterans.
I'm more resourceful than I thought.
My suit can still make an impression.
My video games are still game changers.
And my lamp can bring others a bright future.
Because when I donate my stuff to Goodwill,
it helps fund job placement and training for people right in my community.
Now my stuff gets a second chance.
And will give someone in my community
a second chance too.
Goodwill. Donate stuff, create jobs. Find your nearest donation center at goodwill.org. That's goodwill.org. This message brought to you by Goodwill and the Ad Council.
We will never fully understand what we've asked of our military service members or their families, asking them to put themselves in harm's way, to endure it all. But we do understand that it's our turn, our duty, to keep them secure for the rest of their lives. Wounded Warrior Project long-term support programs help our most severely ill or injured veterans live independently, at no cost, for life, so that they might stand at ease. Join us at findwwp.org.
This is Behind the Mic with Brad Dalius.
Us on your smartphone. We're available on Google Play and the App Store. BehindTheMicShow.com is our official live stream. And don't forget to check out our podcast on iHeartRadio. Brad Dalius taking the show on the road this evening as we are live from Miami, back in Los Angeles next week, back in Grunion Sports Bar and Grill next Wednesday, and next Thursday we will be back at Kings Cove in El Segundo. Taking your calls tonight at 213-261-7491, 213-261-7491. Some great games here in the late going this evening in the NCAA Tournament. 47-46, Buffalo on top of Arizona. Coming up on about 16 minutes to play in that one, second half. First half, Montana got out to a huge lead over Michigan. The Wolverines have rebounded since and have gotten up 22-19, that one approaching the halftime mark on TBS. Alabama and Virginia Tech all tied up at 57, coming up on 11 to play in the second half. And St. Bonaventure, the Bonnies, playing Florida really close right now. It's 27-22, the Gators with the 5-point advantage. That one at the 1 minute and 15-second mark as they come up on halftime in that game. But great games today. Day one, you couldn't have asked for much better. To recap again, the first game today, Rhode Island, Oklahoma, the Trae Young show with the Sooners. It goes into overtime. It looks like potentially that Rhode Island can finish it out in regulation. The putback just did not go off the glass, so they go to overtime. But give Rhode Island credit. They persevered, and they were able to come out on top. A lot of people bought into the Penn hype, yours truly included, but Kansas prevailed ultimately 76-60 in the 1-16 matchup in the Midwest region. The top seed in the East, Villanova, all over Radford. The Wildcats were very impressive today in their opening round game. Xavier and the number one overall seed in the tournament, the Virginia Cavaliers, both those two number ones in action tomorrow. Duke was impressive over Iona in the 2-15 matchup out of the Midwest. Gonzaga, the definition of survive and advance, as they eventually took care of North Carolina Greensboro up in Boise, Idaho. But like I said, great games here in the final wave of day one of the tournament. We look forward to day two coming up in, just over 13 hours or so, 12 noon Eastern time tomorrow. So great action today here. Obviously, across the NCAA tournament. The NBA continues as well. That's right. The NBA basketball regular season continues to roll along even during March Madness. Myself and Keith Jackson, my co-host back in Los Angeles, had a great interview last week with SB Nation's Silver Screen and Roll blogger, Christian Rivas. Some great insights on the Lakers and where they're at right now as they head into the stretch run of the regular season. Lonzo Ball's first year, rookie year in the NBA with the Lakers, the ups and downs with him on the court, off the court, with the Ball family as a whole. Julius Randle, is he going to be traded? Is he not going to be traded? Is he going to go to the highest bidder this offseason? We talked about that situation. Isaiah Thomas, how does IT fit in with this Lakers team? Is he going to get a fair shake at a contract this offseason? We talked about what are the plans for this Lakers team in 2018 in the offseason. Once the summer rolls around, what does Magic Johnson and Rob Pelinka plan to do? Are they going to go after a Paul George? Did they somehow lure away a LeBron James from Cleveland and Miami? Or do they wait for 2019 and a potential Kawhi Leonard or a Giannis from Milwaukee? We talked about all this stuff and more last week when we had the opportunity to chat with Christian Rivas, SB Nation's Silver Screen and Roll blogger. Here's our interview from last Thursday from Kings Cove in El Segundo. We're going to talk a little NBA now, as we're now joined on the line by SB Nation's Christian Rivas. He covers the Lakers for Silver Screen and Roll, their blog there they have on SB Nation. They've always had some great stuff they're putting out there, as Christian now joins us on the line. Christian, thanks so much for coming on tonight. How you doing?
I'm doing all right. Thanks for having me, guys.
Absolutely. It's our pleasure. We really want to dive into, talk about this team right now, because this has been an interesting season, I think, to say the least. There's been peaks and valleys, obviously. There's been some really fascinating storylines, and really the most important thing now is that the team is winning. Not as consistently as we want to see, but they're starting to win games. As evident last night, they won 108-107 over the Magic over at Staples Center. Where do you think this team is at right now, Christian? What would you say the state of the team is as we head into, pretty much the home stretch here coming up of the regular season, the last month or so?
I think they're a young team starting to figure things out. I think you have to consider that they're only 4 years into their rebuild, and their head coach is only in his second year as a head coach in the NBA, if you don't count the interim period in Golden State. So this is still a really young team, and for a young team, I think they're playing really well right now. If you look at their rotation, they have 3 rookies playing, over 20 minutes a game, which is unheard of for a team that's gonna win, I think, close to 40 games this season. So I think they're starting to slowly figure things out, and because most of the guys are in their first and second years, I think that's a good sign that they're learning how to win so early. During their time together. So I think Lakers fans should be really excited about the state the team's in, and they have a real chance to make a push in this final quarter of the season.
Okay. Well, let's get to the nitty-gritty, because, I'm a Laker fan. Christian, I watched them. I'm purple and gold to the grave. I've been watching them for years. I know a lot about them and a lot about, what they do. And I want to ask you this, because this is just interesting to me how typically the franchises work. You have Julius Randle, who's coming up on his contract. They've been playing him a lot. He looked visibly upset the last game because he didn't. It seemed like he looked visibly upset because he didn't play those last couple of minutes, and then winning the game. However, what I've noticed, if Kyle Kuzma was at one point their leading scorer of the team, and then Luke when he was starting when Larry Nance got injured, and when Larry Nance came back, he wasn't starting. They put Larry Nance back in, and then they went with Kuzma, and then when Larry Nance got traded, they went with Julius Randle. Is that a sign, do you think, of Julius Randle? It's like, hey, let's showcase Julius Randle and see what we can get for him for the following year, because we want hands off of Kyle Kuzma. We kind of want to keep him under the books and keep him with the team looking forward, because eventually, Julius Randle at the end of the season is going to want his money, and I totally agree. But do you think the Lakers keep Julius Randle?
I think it all depends on how they do this summer. I mean, obviously, Magic and Rob have kept no secret that their plans this summer are to go after 2 max free agents. Whether or not they do that is yet to be seen, and we're going to find that out on July 1st. But I think it all depends on how that plays out. If they get a verbal commitment from Paul George saying that, hey, I'll play for the Lakers, but you got to take care of my people too, because Julius Randle and Paul George share the same agent, Aaron Mintz. So it all depends on how his agent wants to play it. If his agent says, yeah, Paul George will sign with you guys, but you need to take care of Julius Randle too. He's been the best player on your team for a few months now. And if that's the route you want to go, I think that's a good play long term. As far as his playing time, I know reports were that he was feeling a little under the weather last night, and it showed as he played, I think, some of his worst defense of the season last night in Orlando. And when you have a guy like Kuzma who is no better on defense, that's his area he really needs to work on, but can light it up the way he did last night in Orlando. I think you have to pick and choose there. You have to, choose between a guy that can space the floor, has a Swiss Army knife of offensive moves, or a guy that, can get you some in the paint but is a little out of control sometimes. So what they do with Julius Randle is completely up to them. He's a restricted free agent. I expect teams with cap space, particularly Dallas, to go after him hard.
I totally agree with you. I totally agree with you there.
Yeah.
I think Mark Cuban is definitely going to go after him.
Absolutely, yeah. Julius Randle's a hometown kid, and he's had some of his best individual splits against Dallas this season. He gets up a little extra when he's playing at home, so I fully expect Dallas to go after him. But unless it's a max contract offer or anything over $20 million, I think there's a good chance Julius Randle suits up for the purple and gold next season.
Christian, what do you make of the transition of Isaiah Thomas to the Lakers so far? It seems that he has found, if nothing else, a temporary home here in L.A., and that there seems to be good vibes and good chemistry between him, the players, management. Your thoughts so far on IT being here in L.A.?
I think the one thing I noticed about Isaiah Thomas, because I followed him when he was in Boston, even when he was with Sacramento and Phoenix, I think the thing with him that surprised me was his ability to impact the game when his shots aren't falling, which they haven't been. He's shooting under 40% since the trade. He hasn't found a way to be that Isaiah Thomas again. And I don't know if he ever will be. I mean, I pray he does. You always, root for guys like Isaiah Thomas to bounce back full strength. But even if he doesn't, he's finding ways to help the team win. He's a willing playmaker. He makes some silly decisions sometimes, but most of the time his head's in the right place. And I think that comes with him being, a point guard in this league for so long, because he can't play any other position. He's 5'9". They're not going to put him at the 2 or the 3. So he's a very smart basketball player, and it shows when he's on the floor. The bench has improved tremendously as a result of his playmaking. You go from a guy like Jordan Clarkson, who really needs the ball in his hand to operate, to having a guy like Isaiah Thomas, who isn't afraid to share the trigger. And when he's open, he can knock him down. So I think they've liked what they've seen from him so far. I don't know if he's going to get the Brinks trucks he was talking about last summer, but I would not be surprised to see him get, a Lou Williams type offer, maybe a little less, $7 million a year from a team, whether it be the Lakers or someone else.
Yeah, it seems that, excuse me, Keith, it seems that the Lakers, like I said, there's respect here, where he feels like he was not respected in Boston at the end by Danny Ainge, definitely not respected in Cleveland with everything went down there, but here, there seems to be a mutual respect that eventually they can get something figured out. Yes, it may not be ultimately what he wants, Thomas, at the end of the day, but something that is fair across the board.
Christian, you're right on point on that. I actually have someone who's I know close to Isaiah Thomas that really saying that he won't probably get that max deal, but he will get something comparable to it where, the Lakers do like him. They like what he brings to the table and things like that. I got a question for you. My next question, though, is do you think that in Lakers' best interest that not to – because personally, I don't know. I think Paul George may stay in OKC. But do you think that that the better play would be for the Lakers is to maybe go after a Kawhi Leonard and a Giannis instead of Paul George? Because Paul George, I think Paul George is going to, at the end of the day, I think he will probably stay in OKC. I don't know. Maybe he wants to come home. Maybe he does. I don't know if that would be the actual place. But what do you think would be in the best interest of the Los Angeles Lakers if also they keep an Isaiah Thomas? So you think does that move happen to deal with the big deal of whoever they want to sign coming up? Do they wait in 2008 throughout the 2018 season, or 2019 season, or do they go right now and try to go after Paul George?
I think you take what's in front of you. I mean, obviously you don't want to do what Mitch Kupchak and Jim Buss did when they were in charge, where with their jobs on the line, they were scared of just striking out in free agency. So they offered big money to big-name players that hadn't been playing like themselves just to save face. I think they're going to be smarter this time around. I think it's an awful big Lakers fan thing to do, to assume that we have the luxury of picking players that we go after. Because at the end of the day, it's the players making the decision. I think from their standpoint right now, Paul George is the most attainable free agent, only because I think there's a lot going on in Oklahoma City. There's a lot of factors you have to consider. One, we're in March, and there's the number 7 seed in the Western Conference with a chance to fall to the 8th seed with their rough schedule coming up. So that's one thing you have to consider. If Paul George at the end of the season is at the 8th seed and the Lakers are at where I think they peak is the 11th seed, only a few games back, you have to look at those. What they're building long term, I'm going to be the number 1 option there. Have a better chance to build a championship contender by the time the Warriors championship window comes, or flies by in 2-3 years. I'm hoping. I don't want to see the Warriors in the finals every year, but I think what Paul George has to decide is, what's my best decision as a basketball player? Because he even said when they asked him, what factors are going to go into your decision in free agency, and he said, I don't want people to think that I'm going to stay in Oklahoma City because I'm happy, because I am comfortable here. I'm happy here, but that's not what's ultimately going to come down to my decision. He's going to make the decision that's best for his family, best for him long term, and I think personally, and it might just be because I'm a Lakers fan, that Paul George's best interest is going to be in LA. Say they strike out on a guy like Paul George and they want to consider, offering a big money contract for 1 year to a guy like Isaiah Thomas. I think that's a smart move, and I think you'll see that if they don't. And having the flexibility they have doesn't only mean that they can go after free agents. They can facilitate trades where they can take salary back without sending anything but, cheap contracts and future first-round picks. So I think they did a really good job of, maintaining that flexibility going into next summer or even the summer after when guys like Kawhi and Giannis are available. But you heard Kawhi Leonard say this morning that he fully intends on retiring a Spur, and I think Giannis is more of a wild card. I know he had an issue with the front office letting Jason Kidd go the way they did. So it's really all up in the air. But like I said, you just got to take whatever's in front of you. It's kind of like the draft. Take the best player available and ask questions later.
SB Nation's Christian Rivas joining us on Behind the Mic. Check out SB Nation's blog, Silver Screen and Roll. So, Christian, let's assume that, the offseason comes up here in the summer, July 1st comes, and let's assume that the Lakers do land a Paul George. And let's assume, just playing hypothetical here, let's assume they lure one LeBron James to L.A. as well. I think we've all seen the billboards now, the hashtag LeBron with the L.A. at the front there. We're all getting a good kick out of that one. But let's assume they land both these guys. They bring them in. Where does the management of this team, Magic and Rob, both of them, do they realistically think that they can compete right away in a snap with Golden State? Or at that point, do they feel that they still need to tweak the roster with a couple of depth moves?
That's a very good question. I think you look at teams like Golden State, when they landed Kevin Durant, they had to make some moves to facilitate that move. And I think that was the thing for me at the trade deadline anyway, because they were in a hurry prior to the trade deadline to get rid of Julius Randle. And my logic was, you don't even have a verbal commitment from any of these players, and if you do, that's illegal. That's fine, but it's illegal. I don't think they should be in any rush to move young, talented players when those are the best players they have right now. They can't think too far ahead into the future. But if they do land both Paul George and LeBron James this summer, I think you do have to start taking into consideration the type of player LeBron James is. He's going to come in here and he's going to want to have some control of the team, historically speaking. And you saw what he did in Cleveland. The whole roster got a facelift. They offloaded first-round picks for talent like nothing. They gave up 2 first-rounders for Timothy Mozgov. They traded away the number 1 pick for Kevin Love. So you have to stop and think, is that the same route they're going to go in L.A. if LeBron signs? And if so, who is expendable? Is it Lonzo Ball, which I don't think it would be, because finding a franchise point guard in this league is a rarity, especially if you're not a lottery team. And assuming Paul George and LeBron James sign, I'd hope they're not a lottery team. So does that make Brandon Ingram expendable, who plays the same positions as LeBron James and Paul George? Does that make Kyle Kuzma expendable? I think those are definitely questions that they start considering. But again, I think it's a little early to be thinking about that. And even if they don't move players, I think the roster has enough talent right now to maybe not beat Golden State, but to give them a scare in the first round. I think with LeBron James and Paul George, the Lakers are going to be that team you don't want to see in the first round.
Let me ask you this, Christian, because this is something I've thought about for a while, and I think it's not far-fetched. I think Lonzo Ball, they've handed him the keys pretty fast and expected a lot of things out of him, and it just hasn't really worked out. I think now he's playing with a lot more confidence, I think, now towards the end of the season. But is this guy tradable? Is he a guy that you with the Lakerland, should they be surprised if they decide not to go with Lonzo and they end up moving him?
I would be surprised.
Okay.
I think Lonzo Ball is a better player than a lot of people give him credit for. If you look at the box score alone, I don't think it's a fair indication of the type of player he is. Lonzo Ball's a very unselfish player. You see that by his assist numbers. But he's also just a really smart basketball player.
Yeah.
He makes winning plays. He plays hard defense, which has been by far the most impressive thing from him for me. Because, the jury out on him out of college was he can't play defense. And if you're going to pair him alongside D'Angelo Russell, that's going to be a nightmare because D'Angelo Russell can't play defense. So they brought in a wing defender in Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. But it turns out Lonzo Ball can play defense. I mean, that 6'5", almost 6'6" frame and his long arms have been put to good use. His on-ball anticipation and his off-ball anticipation are fantastic. And every time I watch him play, I'm blown away because he's only in his first year and he's doing first-team all-defense stuff. Maybe not yet, but you definitely see the upside there where he's going to be an elite defender in this league for a while. And he's shooting 50% from behind the arc since coming back from the All-Star break. So you got a guy that plays defense, that can make threes, that can, share the ball, make smart decisions. That's not a player you find too often in this league. You find one-way players, defense only players like John Wall, who can, provide you a little something on offense, but he's made his money on playing hard defense and passing the ball. So I would be forced to see them trade Lonzo Ball, the type of player I think he is and he's going to be.
It's not too surprising that Lonzo is playing better, considering the fact that we have not heard from LeVar recently, Christian. I don't think that's a coincidence. I honestly, and we've talked about that here before, Keith and I on Behind the Mic, that when LeVar starts to quiet down, when he starts to step out of the spotlight and let Lonzo be his own person and player, for that matter, he would probably play better, consistent basketball, which we are seeing now. What is your thoughts on just how this whole season has transpired with the off-the-court antics, if you will, between, the Ball family and the Lakers as an organization?
Yeah, I think because it was funny, even when Lonzo Ball was struggling in the beginning of the season, he was shooting leaps and bounds better on the road than he was at home. And people started, to question the same thing you were questioning. Is it because LeVar Ball isn't present? Is it because, that weight's off his shoulders when he's not playing in Los Angeles. But, I mean, at least the latter can be debunked because he played for UCLA, and he was a star in UCLA. So I don't think that's an issue. I think to me personally, the only time LeVar Ball is an issue is when he starts criticizing personnel, the coaching staff, the front office management, because as much as the team doesn't want him in front of the mic, they're going to keep putting the mic in his face as long as he's, available. That's when it becomes a problem for me because, earlier in the season you had him telling an ESPN reporter that Luke Walton had lost the locker room, that the players don't believe in him anymore. And, if you look, perhaps at that time that was true, but that's nobody's business but, the team. And I think to Luke Walton's credit, with all that going on, he's done a fantastic job of keeping that team together, rallying them together, a young team, mind you, and telling them to block all the outside noise that comes with not only playing in Los Angeles, but now playing with Lonzo Ball and the circus that comes around him with LeVar Ball, Lithuania, the whole incident in China with his brother. So I think it's definitely it's going to be interesting how they develop, but he's been a lot more quiet since the team started winning. So I think that's something to keep in mind, that winning might not fix everything, but it fixes a lot of things.
Hey, and my last question for you, Christian, is where do you see the Lakers going forward? Do you think what are Laker fans? What is something to expect for them? What should they expect going forward? Do you think, number one, the Lakers can possibly get into the playoffs this year? That's number one. And number two, if they don't get into playoffs, coming into next year's prediction of next year, let's say even without the moves, let's say that doesn't happen, do the Lakers do better than what they did this past season? This current season?
Yeah, absolutely. I think so. And I think that's going to be their pitch to free agents this summer, is while I don't think they make the playoffs this year, only because, the way the Utah Jazz and the Clippers have been playing, they're neck and neck for that 8th seed. And perhaps maybe a year or 2 years ago, a 500 record was good enough to get you in the playoffs. Even Isaiah Thomas was saying when he first got to Los Angeles that this situation reminded him of the situation he came to with Boston, where they were a young team, they were hungry, they wanted to make the playoffs, and they ended up making that push. The only difference is that season, Isaiah Thomas's first season in Boston, 40 and 42 was good enough for the number 7 seed in the Eastern Conference. The Lakers play in the Western Conference, and right now, 5 games above 500 isn't even good enough for the 8th seed. It's barely good enough. So I don't think they make the playoffs this year, but I think, going back to my original point, their pitch to free agents this year is, hey, we're going to be here with you or without you. Can your current team that you're with right now say that? And I think for a lot of teams, the answer is no. If Russell Westbrook did not have Paul George, if it was just Russell Westbrook and Carmelo Anthony, I think they would be one of those fringe all-star teams, regardless of whether or not they have the reigning MVP and a young, stud like Steven Adams on the team. I think, they're still a fringe all-star team without Paul George. And there's a lot of things you got to take into consideration, injuries, things like that. And the Lakers right now are pretty banged up and have, won 5 of their last 6 since the All-Star break. I'm sorry, 6 of the last 7 since the All-Star break, with a bunch of G-Leaguers on their roster. They just signed Travis Ware of the South Philly Lakers to a 10-day contract, and he's playing well. It's almost like they're, the Spurs on the West Coast with the way they're bringing up talent and making them NBA players in that system. So I think that's what Lakers fans should be looking for going forward. Improvement from the young guys and, the ability to win, to play winning basketball, because at the end of the day, it doesn't matter, the big Los Angeles market, other factors outside of that. At the end of the day, people are playing to win. They want to be playing basketball in May. So I think the Lakers are definitely on the right path, and there's a ton to be excited about in Los Angeles.
Last question for you, Christian. Currently right now we're seeing San Antonio and Golden State battle it out on TNT tonight. Golden State trying for their 6th consecutive victory over San Antonio. As we look towards the playoffs now in the Western Conference, do you think there is a team that can legitimately challenge Golden State, or is it going to be chalk where the Warriors are easily into the finals once again?
I think Houston has a really, really, really good chance of scaring the Golden State Warriors in the Western Conference Finals. I think Golden State was banking on a lot of the guys they brought back to be the same players, and that just hasn't been the case. You've seen the decline from Sean Livingston. Andre Iguodala, most notably, has had a pretty horrific season after signing a contract this last summer. And Houston's excited. This Houston team reminds me of the Golden State team that won the first time around. They just have that buzz around them that they're hungry. They're ready to win. And I think Golden State is getting a little complacent in the position they're in. They know they're talented, but you've seen a lot this season that they're playing down to their competition. They're cruising right now. And I don't know if they're talented enough, which sounds crazy, by the way. You have 2 MVPs on the team, and you're talking about whether or not they're talented enough. But I don't think, they're deep enough to be taking breaks the way they have been lately, where they just cruise to the finish line. You can't do that against a team like Houston. Houston's going to come at you every time down the floor, and they have the personnel to do it. So I think Houston has a definite shot of putting up a fight. Beyond that, though, I don't see it. You have Portland, who I think is like the pseudo number 3 seed in the Western Conference right now, because they're not as good as advertised. No matter how good Damian Lillard is, that team isn't going to stand a chance in a 7-game series with Golden State. So my answer to that would be Houston definitively. Everyone else, they'd have to find Golden State on a really bad day.
Great insights. SB Nation's Christian Rivas. Check out the blog Silver Screen and Roll. Follow him on Twitter @RadRivas. Hey, Christian, thanks so much for coming on tonight, man. We really appreciate it. Enjoy the stretch here as we head into the playoffs coming up pretty soon.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for having me. I had a great time.
Our thanks once again to Christian Rivas from SB Nation's Silver Screen and Roll blog for joining us last week here on Behind the Mic. Great chatting with him. All things Lakers concerned. He's got the pulse of it, as you heard right there. The upset of the day in the tournament is currently brewing right now out in Boise, Idaho. Buffalo, the Bulls, are all over Arizona. It's 72-58. Just under 7 minutes to play in that one. The first round action in the South. Final game of the day from Idaho there in Boise. And right now the Bulls are poised to pull off the upset right now over Sean Miller's Wildcats. We had talked about how Arizona could be on upset alert. Things changed a bit for most people, including yours and truly, after the Pac-12 tournament and how dominant they were, especially with DeAndre Ayton and how he played against USC in the finale. But right now, Buffalo sticking it to Arizona, the 13 seed over the 4 in the South. The winner of this game gets Kentucky in the round of 32 on Saturday. So, again, the upset of the day potentially brewing right now in this 4 versus 13 matchup. Houston took care of San Diego State earlier tonight. Gonzaga, they survived an advance earlier this afternoon. Currently, Montana and Michigan are still at the half, 31-28, Wolverines in the lead. Alabama and Virginia Tech. Alabama with a 78-72 lead. That one just under a minute to play over on TNT. Keep tabs on that. St. Bonaventure and Florida. The Bonnies trying to hang tough. The Gators have extended their lead now, though, to 12. It's 34-22, just getting underway in the second half. That one over on True TV. That one, the final game of the evening. Now 75-58. Buffalo continues to extend their lead over Arizona, now under 6 to play from Boise, as we keep tabs on all these games here on the final stretch of games here on this first day of the NCAA Tournament. Beware of the Ides of March. They can come up and sneak up and bite you, as they did locally here today in Miami, with the Hurricanes falling to Loyola-Chicago 64-62. We talked earlier tonight with SB Nation, another great blog they have, The State of the U. Fantastic chatting with Mr. Michael Franca. He had some great insights tonight into Miami, how they felt today. Lonnie Walker's freshman season comes to an end. The Phenom out of Pennsylvania getting a lot of buzz. And if you don't follow the ACC tournament, the ACC conference as a whole, if you don't follow Miami basketball, you haven't heard a lot about Lonnie Walker, but people are starting to now, based off of how he played towards the end of the season. The whole season, really, but now the end of the season. And it looks like potentially Michael thinks he could be one and done. We shall see. The NBA draft obviously coming up in June. Lots to discuss as far as the one and done players. We've talked about it here on Behind the Mic. Should they continue the one and done? Should they somehow extend out the age range and make it 21 instead of 18? Do they have maybe a 3-year minimum requirement in college for basketball players, as they do currently for football players at the collegiate level? Different things to explore. We've chatted about it here on previous weeks, as I said, on Behind the Mic. It's always good up for debate. 213-261-7491. That is the number to jump aboard. 213-261-7491. Talking March Madness, NFL free agency, a little Tiger Woods as well. Shoots a 64 opening round at the Bay Hill Arnold Palmer Invitational. Just a few weeks away from Augusta at the Masters. Vegas already thinks that Tiger should be the favorite going into that event. What do you say? NFL free agency news. There's so much to get into. The league year officially began yesterday, obviously, on the 14th. From Tavon Austin restructuring his contract with the Rams, and Ndamukong Suh, he's been released by Miami. He's scheduled to visit with the Saints, the Titans. Former New England Patriot offensive lineman Nate Solder signs a 4-year, $62 million contract with the New York Football Giants. He's out the door on to new adventures. Tyrann Mathieu has been released by the Cardinals. Arizona, this is a team who is rebuilding. They have players on defense who were somewhat stalwarts on that team that were anchors. Chandler Jones, Tyrann Mathieu, but now Mathieu is gone. He is no longer there. He will be out, and potentially Dallas could be a suitor for him, maybe an AFC East team. Where does Tyrann Mathieu land? We know where Jordy Nelson has landed. He is going to be an Oakland Raider in 2018. Oakland part waves, decides to cut Michael Crabtree to make room for Jordy Nelson. The Packers move on from him. I think Green Bay, this is somewhat of a rebuilding process for them now. They're not going to say that officially, but with releasing a guy like Jordy Nelson and moving on from him, I feel that it's somewhat of a rebuilding process. I think the window, I'm willing to say now that the window has officially closed for Green Bay. I think the window has closed for them at this current point in time. I don't think they're going to be able to potentially make a run for it here in 2018. It's amazing what a year makes, but from 2017 to 2018, this team just needs to improve defensively first and foremost. They're a long way away from being ultra competitive on that side of the football. Now you see them releasing guys on the offensive side. It appears they're in a rebuild mode. They're not going to say that, but that's what it looks like. Things are headed towards there up in Green Bay. And how about Kirk Cousins? The Kirk Cousins sweepstakes finally come to an end. It looks like he is going to sign officially with the Minnesota Vikings. He will move on from a situation in Washington in which it was getting worse before it was getting any better. He was, like him or not, he was consistently, statistically wise, one of the better quarterbacks in the National Football League over the past couple of seasons. He moves on to Minnesota, a team that is ready to win now, in a division that Green Bay is starting to come back to the pack, sort of say, no pun intended. They decide not to re-sign Case Keenum, which I think was the right move for them. I think they went out on that one. I'll get into Keenum in just a second. Kirk Cousins, though, he got his payday. We all knew it. I think Minnesota wins in this case. Guys like Dalvin Cook coming back from injured reserve from this past year. You'll see him. They still have talent at the receiver position with Stephon Diggs and company. It's a team that there's talent there on both sides of the ball. I like the move. I was a little apprehensive about Minnesota as far as Case Keenum was concerned, bringing him back. It just didn't sit well with you Vikings fans, and you definitely know what I'm talking about with that NFC Championship game loss at Philadelphia. Just did not play good football. It was not inspiring enough for fans, and now we know it was not inspiring enough for management as they decided not to bring back Case Keenum. Keenum officially signs with the Denver Broncos. He's off to Denver. It's an interesting move for the Broncos. They're trying not to rebuild. They're trying to simply reload. Without Aqib Talib now on defense, it's going to be a hard time. We've got plenty of time throughout the offseason here and as free agency just starts to get going, to talk about Denver and how they fare out in the AFC West with some of the other teams out there, the Chargers and Chiefs included. How do the Raiders fit into the thing as far as the divisional race goes in 2018? Look, it was an upgrade over Trevor Siemian and Paxton Lynch for that matter. But not by much. Not by much. Minnesota actually picks up Siemian in a trade with Denver to back up Kirk Cousins. So Minnesota's got Cousins number 1, the backup Siemian number 2. That's not too bad. Denver now moves on and goes forward with Case Keenum as their starting quarterback. And I think the big loser here so far in NFL free agency as far as the quarterback sweepstakes is concerned is the New York Jets. I talked about them having the ability to spend whatever certain dollar figure they wanted to. If you're a player, you're a free agent, and you name the dollar figure, bam, they match it. And who knows how the negotiations went down with Kirk Cousins. Were they a major player? Were they not? At the end of the day here, it looks more so like the latter. It looks more so like they were not a big player, and even though they had tons of money to spend, $100 million under the salary cap, who did they sign? Teddy Bridgewater. They signed Bridgewater away from Minnesota, and Bridgewater is now a New York Jet. Kirk Cousins, they don't get their man as Cousins goes to Minnesota. They signed Teddy Bridgewater. Who else did they sign? They signed Josh McCown. So you got Bridgewater, McCown. They're your Jets quarterbacks. Josh McCown was assured that he will be the starter going into training camp at least. If he is still the starting quarterback when training camp finishes and week 1 commences, yikes. Not good news. Not good news at all for the New York Jets if that is the case. So, to me, the Jets have been the big losers here. They really, really have been. I want to get your take on it. You know, NFL free agency so far, who's been the big winner and who's been the big loser? To me, it's Kirk Cousins going to Minnesota. I think the Vikings are the big winner so far. The big loser has got to be the Jets. Quarterback's the most important position, not only in football, but in all of sports. That's how you're going to judge free agency so far. And it's early, but with the quarterback being the most important position and the Jets knowing that and really having no excuses not to get the top free agent out there on the market, it is a disgrace. It really is that they were not able to sign him. I mean, Teddy Bridgewater is a nice quarterback, but come on. Teddy Bridgewater and Josh McCown, give me a break. For a Jets team that knew they would need a top quarterback to have any type of remote chance of competing with the Patriots in the AFC East, did a flop. It was not as bad as a Mark Sanchez butt fumble, but they did a flop here. You've got to be kidding me. Teddy Bridgewater and Josh McCown, that's not good enough. That's not good enough to really have better than 8-8, 9-7, let alone competing for a divisional title. in the AFC East division. But I want to know, who has been the big free agency winner so far in the NFL and who's been the big loser? 213-261-7491. 213-261-7491. Coming up on 2 minutes to play in Boise, it's all Buffalo. The Bulls are running away with this one. They're going to take it. They're up by 19 right now, 83-64 over Arizona. They're going to advance to face Kentucky, and it looks like Arizona is one and done. Who knows what is to come in the upcoming months here with that organization and that program specifically. Sean Miller, what is his future? Potentially, are they waiting for something to drop here? And as far as the NCAA is concerned, we know Arizona has chosen to stick with him, but as far as the future goes, who knows? As Buffalo drills another three just on fire from downtown and from the field in general, now 86-64, pouring it on with just under 2 minutes to play in regulation. Alabama continues to lead Virginia Tech 85-79, 17 seconds left in that one. Virginia Tech's flame of existence in this NCAA tournament is just about ready to be extinguished. That one over on TNT, the 8-9 matchup. Michigan leads Montana 38-30, just underway. 2 minutes into the second half on that one over on TBS. And then the final game of the evening, it's Florida and St. Bonaventure. Florida with a comfortable 11-point lead at the moment over the Bonnies, as St. Bonaventure trying to continue a run here in this NCAA tournament after winning the first four matchup a couple of nights ago. So great day one here. I mean, really, this has been good action. The first day of the tournament, it's what you want to see. You've had some upsets. You've had some close calls. You've had some survive and advance scenarios, a.k.a. Gonzaga earlier on today. Ohio State held on to beat South Dakota State. Seton Hall over NC State as well. Villanova took down Radford earlier today, 87-61. Nova was very impressive. I mentioned Davidson played Kentucky tough, but the Wildcats outlasted them ultimately in that one. Houston over San Diego State by a deuce. And then Texas Tech survived somewhat of a scare from Stephen F. Austin as the Red Raiders prevailed by 10. The thriller from earlier today, the first game of the day, Rhode Island over Oklahoma in overtime. Trae Young played great for the Sooners, but they came up just a little bit short. Tennessee dominated Wright State. I mean, that game was not even close for the most part. The Volunteers rolled. I talked about Gonzaga surviving and advancing. Kansas survived the scare from Penn. I bought into the Quaker love. I was feeling it, but ultimately they did not survive as Kansas won. Duke, big winners over Iona. Loyola-Chicago with the upset victory over Miami today. Just some great action from all across college basketball on day one of March Madness. Just good stuff overall. 213-261-7491. 213-261-7491. Tiger Woods with an opening round 64 today at Bay Hill. The Arnold Palmer Invitational. Tiger just playing a phenomenal round of golf. Las Vegas has pushed him to the top as their main favorite to win the Masters in just a couple of weeks. We'll have a Masters preview show coming up for you in a few weeks back in Los Angeles. Talk a little golf, get you ready for the first major of the season, as it is now officially a final. Buffalo knocks off Arizona 89-68. The Bulls moving on to the round of 32. The Wildcats going home back to Tucson. A quick exit for Arizona and DeAndre Ayton. A 13 beats of 4. The first major upset of March Madness 2018. That one coming to you from the South region in Boise. This is what it's all about. I mean, it's all about the upset sprinkled in with the occasional mismatch, but everything in between is what you want to see as a whole. So great stuff so far today, and obviously great stuff to come in day two coming up tomorrow in less than 12 hours at this point, as the madness will continue not too far from now. That's going to do it for tonight's show. A great one. Really enjoyed getting a chance to review all of March Madness here on day one. Thanks so much to Mr. Michael Franca, who called in tonight. It was great to get his thoughts on Miami basketball. Hurricanes coming up a little bit short tonight, but it was great to get his insights on this live broadcast here tonight from Miami for Behind the Mic. And we plan to be back here at some point in the future as well. Some great sports bars in Miami and some great places to visit, as we will be back on the East Coast in just a little bit amount of time, hopefully in the coming months. We will be back in Los Angeles next week. Brad Dallas, yours truly, joined by Keith Jackson, back at Grunion Sports Bar and Grill next Wednesday. Next Thursday, we will be back at Kings Cove inside the Toyota Sports Center at the official training facility of the Los Angeles Kings. Once again, a final. Buffalo, with the shocker of the day, knocks off fourth-seeded Arizona 89-68 from Boise. Alabama, it is a final now of Virginia Tech, 86-83. Florida and St. Bonaventure, the Gators starting to pull away from the Bonnies, 45-31. Michigan and Montana, the final game of the day. The Wolverines still maintaining that 8-point lead over Montana. Second half just getting underway, and that one over on TBS. So great stuff today. Round 2, don't forget tomorrow. Round 2, Arnold Palmer Invitational. Tiger Woods looking to continue his strong ways. And obviously round 1 continues of March Madness. Definitely enjoy the rest of the games. It will be a great weekend to come. Have a great St. Patrick's Day. And have a great night, everybody. Don't forget, download the Behind the Mic app on your smartphone. Listen online always at BehindTheMicShow.com. And check out our podcast on iHeartRadio. This is Brad Dallas. We'll talk to you next week. Keep living the dream.